Hey everybody, welcome to WOW. And if you live in eastern, northeastern Oklahoma, wow, what a beautiful day. Absolutely. And so I want to thank you guys as I try to do every week. Thank you so much for chiming in on these WOW programs. If you are new to it, it's just a simple excerpt of a subject for everyday life from a Christian perspective. I am a full-time minister. Uh, I I don't understand everything, but I can talk to you from things I have gone through. Your greatest witness is experience, and so use your experiences in life to help other people. And so anyway, thank you guys, and I see you chiming in now. Thank you so much. I want to get right to this. Let me say this. I'll be ministering up in Vera, Oklahoma this morning at 11 o'clock. Wonderful group of people. I go do a Bible study once a month for that congregation. Absolutely love them. I've been going up there, almost 32 years. So that's quite a while. And so even when I was in part-time ministry, I was going up there. So if you're in that area of southern Kansas, northeastern Oklahoma, and you can make it over, do your best to try to do that. I believe we're going to have a good time this morning. What I wanted to bring to you is something, again, it's easy to talk about things when you do them or go through them yourself. And I quite often find myself talking to myself. And, you know, growing up, boy, if you saw somebody talking to themselves, you would think, well, in the psychological world, they would be deemed as schizophrenic. But not everyone that talks to themselves are schizophrenic. And I always like to see the positive side, because you hear the term, oh, they're talking to themselves, and you immediately have put it in a negative connotation, which shouldn't be. Because I wanted to research. Okay, Mark, you talk to yourself. I talk out loud to myself when I'm by myself, and I answer myself. I used to make a joke years ago, it's one thing to talk to yourself, it's another thing to answer yourself. And so I began to study it and the science of talking to yourself. And what I found out is this, and yes, we are going somewhere in the Bible. What I found out is this: talking to yourself is completely normal. So that ought to make many of you happy. You are normal. You're not schizophrenic. And it's actually, they say, not a bad thing to talk to yourself. So it being a normal habit, it is really called self-directed speech, where you can actually benefit from talking to yourself. It can help motivate you. You challenge yourself with positive self-talk, and it absolutely stimulates you, motivates you to get things done. You know, I even now I have this little issue where I have 1,000 things going on, and I'll lay my keys down, or I'll put this there or that there, and then I walk back in, and I out loud I'll say, now, what did I come in here for? Or I'll say, now, where did I put those? And I'm talking out loud to myself. And at first you're thinking, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. But then I found out it's actually good to talk to yourself. But they also say when you do talk to yourself, it's best to talk to yourself, especially when you're going through a struggle. It is good to talk to yourself in the second or the third person, instead of saying, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Switch it over into, you can do this. Mark, you can do this. Whatever your name is, you can do this. So you are, in studying this, I saw one commentation that I really enjoyed. One man said, The reason I talk to myself is because I want an intelligent conversation. I fell in love with that. If you want an intelligent conversation, talk to yourself. And sometimes you have to do that because some of the people you may hang around are very negative, they're very pessimistic. And especially when you're going through a struggle, you don't need someone crying on your shoulder. You need somebody to say, hey, you can do this, you can handle this. And so I encourage you, don't stop talking to yourself, but start talking to yourself in that second person. Like somebody else is telling you, you can do this. You're going to be all right. You're more than a conqueror. You can do all things through Christ that gives you strength. Because if you just keep putting it in the personal pronoun, I can do this, I can do this, you're your only cheerleader. But if you put it in the second or the third person, you begin to feel like someone else is encouraging you. Now, that may sound strange to you, but it actually does work. In other words, you'll say, instead of saying, I can absolutely do this, you start saying, you know what, you're doing great. You can absolutely do this. You've got this. You've got this. All right. Just a little bit more. You're going to be fine. You start encouraging yourself like that, and you're constantly conversing with someone that is positive, and that positive person is you. You're just seeing you from a distance. You're not seeing you from the inside looking out. There's a part of you from the outside looking in that you just become your own cheerleader. So when you do refer to yourself with these second or third person pronouns, it seems like you're speaking to another person. And this will actually provide an emotional distance in different situations and relieve you from stress. Okay? So it's okay to take some time and just sit with different emotions in situations, because when you talk to yourself, you're actually unpacking those emotions and potential worries for a more realistic concern. Now, you can do this in your head and you can do it on paper, but they say when you say things out loud, it helps you to ground them in reality. So you're not just saying in your thoughts, you're healed, you're healed. You're saying with your mouth, you're healed. And faith comes by hearing. You know, we have to have faith in God. Yes, we need faith in God, but you need to have faith in yourself. And God gave you a voice to help you build your faith, because faith does come by hearing. So faith can come from a positive friend, hearing them say, hey, you got this. It's going to be okay. Now, saying things like little mantras like, you are strong, you are loved. You can face these challenges today. Why don't you talk yourself into it in the morning? While you're getting dressed in the morning to go to work or go to a doctor's appointment or go to a meeting, and all these thoughts are running through your head, get over in that second person and just talk to yourself. You know what? This is going to be okay. You are absolutely going to walk out of this unscathed. And like the Hebrew children, they fell in the fiery furnace, but they didn't even smell like the smoke. That's the kind of cheerleader you need. And so when you do out loud talk to yourself, like in that second or third person, then it's almost like you're phrasing it, you're speaking to someone else, but you'll actually have an easier time believing what you say when you hear it from someone else. Now, don't get off and get goofy with this, but that's just the way the science of our brains work. When you hear another party say, you are healed, You are blessed. You are highly favored. You are the head and not the tail. You are always above and never beneath. This talking to yourself is completely normal and encouraged. Now, let's draw the line, and I hope you guys are getting this. There is a difference between normal, talking to yourself, and abnormal. And again, that is called schizophrenia. That's one of the stages of schizophrenia, when people talk to themselves. Well, Mark, when is it not normal and it's actually schizo that I would talk to myself? Schizophrenia is literally distortions of reality. It's delusions, hallucinations. You imagine yourself hearing a bad report. You imagine yourself being sick. You imagine yourself having cancer. You imagine yourself being broke. Now, when you start talking to those voices, then it's abnormal, because the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty in God for the pulling down of strongholds. And so when those thoughts cross your mind, you pull on your cheerleader. Hey, you've got this. It's going to be a good report. It's going to be all right. You're going to be just fine. So abnormality of talking to yourself is when you begin to converse with your negative emotions, okay? And so these, what do they call them in science? Auditory hallucinations. I loved this study. Auditory hallucinations are when you hear voices without any exterior reality. In other words, you're hearing a voice, you're sick, when you're not even sick. You're hearing a voice, you're going to have a bad day, when the day hasn't even begun. And so those voices put you in fear, and anytime you live in fear, you always stay in the first person. And it can wear you out battling by yourself. You need to draw on your partner, okay? And the Spirit of Christ, the Spirit of the anointing, the Spirit of the Word is your partner. And he said, I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. I've taught for years, you don't talk to God about your problem. You talk to your problem about God. And so you don't speak to the mountain as if God's going to move it. You speak to the mountain like you have the authority of God. That is first person talking to a problem, and that is your cheerleader. And I encourage you guys to pull on your cheerleader. You're not schizo because you hear those voices, but understanding those voices of negativity will try to get you to listen to them so they can keep controlling your thoughts. And if your thoughts are controlled, your conversation is controlled. We live and die by the words of our mouth. And that's not just out in public, and I am a word of faith person. I believe in the power of positive confession, but too many people, when they're talking to other people, they'll say, how you doing? Oh, I'm blessed, healed, and highly favored. But then they leave, they get in their vehicle, and they just converse with the negative side. And I keep on seeing you guys chime in. I'm so happy for that. So all I want to tell you is very short and simple. You're normal if you talk to yourself. You can talk yourself into or out of anything, but you need to draw on that cheerleader. So it's normal to answer your talk. It's not normal to answer the talk of negativity in your thoughts. You look at the book of Matthew, the 9th chapter, the woman with the issue of blood. She had suffered 12 years with this blood disorder, and she had spent all that she had. They may have had a cure, but she couldn't afford it. She had reached rock bottom. And the word says, I believe it's there in the 21st verse of Matthew 9, she said to herself. Now understand, this woman with an issue of blood was constitutionally, according to the law, you're not supposed to be around her. She is declared unclean for that period. And she's supposed to stay out of the public sight, away from the public. And so she had no one to talk to, so she talked to herself. And she said to herself, if I could only touch the hem of his garment, if you could only touch. She drew on her cheerleader. Man, I hope you guys are getting this. You can go back and we're getting ready to celebrate Christmas season, but you could go back even to the conception of Christ in Mary and Joseph. He resolved the issue in himself, because at first he thought, man, we haven't even had the marriage yet, and she's pregnant. Oh, let's see. I'll just put her away privately. But he resolved the issue and said, no, I will marry this woman. And so Joseph had a conversation with himself, and look where we ended up. What if Joseph had not talked himself into marrying Mary? You see where we're going with this. Even over in, where is it? I've taught out of it 100 times. Luke, the 15th chapter, the prodigal son. You know, he had went and spent his inheritance. He wound up working for a pig farmer and in the lowlands, and was just considered not even a part of the covenant of Israel anymore, according to their statutes and laws. But the word says, while he was in the pig pen, he said to himself, I will arise, I will go to my father, I will say to my father, forgive me, for I have sinned against you and before heaven. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. He talked himself into getting out of that pig pen. You never have an excuse. You have no one to talk to. You can talk to yourself. Okay? Yes, it's great to have friends you can talk to. I have a lot of people I know, but not every person I know do I talk everything about to them. And because I am very choosy about what I want to listen to. I don't want to just hear my side being reinforced or congratulated. I want to hear truth, but I don't want to hear negativity. I don't want to hear negativity. And so, yeah, a lot of times I have to talk to myself. And so, again, in psychology, research just shows that this self-talk is what they call it. This self-talk actually improves the way you think. You think more clearly when you have a conversation with yourself. And yes, you can answer yourself. So you're going through something. You know what, Mark? You are healed. You know what? I am healed. I am now having a conversation, and whatever two of you agree on earth, it will be given them. Let me tell you something, in case you haven't lived long enough to figure this out. Not everyone is going to be in agreement with you when you know the scripture, when you know the truth, when you know you have a dream in your heart, you have a desire in your heart, you need agreement. So you begin to talk out that dream from the second, the third person. And so, you know, well, what do you mean the second and the third person? The second person says you can do this. The third person says we can do this. The we is your personal, and that other voice you come in. I can do this, you can do this. Now I have agreement. And so how can you walk together except you be agreed, the scripture says. So start agreeing with that second person that's telling you, you can do this, you can do this. Now, that second person, if you're like this, have you ever done something you say, oh my God, you're so stupid. I cannot believe you did this. That's not the second person that's going to lead you into the connectivity and the positivity of a good outcome. That's the voice you've got to say, no, that is an auditory hallucination. And let me encourage you, if you are having thoughts and you're hearing voices in your head, you're not going to make it, it's not going to happen, this is not going to work out, you're having an auditory hallucination. It's perfectly normal to hear the voices. It is not normal to have conversations with them. Cast them down by ignoring them. And so this internal dialogue, if you will, it's those voices inside your head. And so let me finish up with this, because I've got to get to service. But if you'll begin to see yourself as the CEO of your life, the chief executive officer of your life, here are your board members. There's you, there's God, and there's self and conflict. Okay? There are board members. And in our society, the majority wins. And so I know people say, well, God's in charge. Well, here's the issue. You're the one that's going to ultimately make the decision. And I take nothing from the omnipotence, omniscience of God. I take nothing from that in what I'm about to tell you. But there are 3 board members in your mind. There's yours, you, the CEO. There is God, the voice of life and truth. And then there's the voice of self. Now, self can start telling you, self is the one that's always going to rain on the parade. Self is the one that's always going to remind you of past failures. Self is the negative response. God is the positive response. But you, as the CEO, make the final decision. Your vote, your action is the deciding vote. Psychological studies even show that thinking and speaking of yourself in a positive way will demand an action, a behavior that is positive. And so how do I say it in psychological terms? I've got me as the CEO, God is on the board, and self is on the board. So I have God, a positive voice. I have self, a negative voice, and I have an instructional voice. And so these 3 voices are in our heads every day. And anytime you're in a board meeting, I have a board in the ministry. Anytime you're in a board meeting, each person has a time to talk. They have a time to converse. But when the meeting is over and a vote is taken, then you're the one, as the CEO of your life. You can't blame God for anything any more than I can blame my secretary for where this ministry goes, or I can blame my vice president for where this ministry goes. It's ultimately up to me. I am the deciding factor of Mark Shell Ministries in the legal terms. And so God will never side with the enemy. We make the decision every day. And sometimes you have to talk yourself into these decisions. Joseph talked himself into it. The prodigal talked himself into it. David, the psalmist David, many of you say, we sing, we quote his writings. David was probably the character in the Bible that talked to himself when he would write things like, "Bless the Lord, O my soul. O my soul is vexed. My soul is blessed." How he was always talking to himself in his Psalms. And, these people, Joseph, David, the woman with the issue of blood, they mastered this internal dialogue. Now, watch this. It is proven through history and study that geniuses like Albert Einstein, different ones that are deemed to be geniuses, they all have at least one thing in common. They talk to themselves a lot. So you're not schizo because you talk to yourself. You become schizo when you side with your negative emotions and voices and you start echoing what they're saying. Okay? And so I want you to leave today knowing every morning you wake up, you're having a board meeting. You're going to hear the negative side, you're going to hear the positive side, and you're going to hear the instructional side, and your action is the deciding vote. And so you've got to see yourself as the CEO of your future. You've got to start seeing yourself as a genius. You are an absolute genius when you talk to yourself. Talk yourself into being healed. Talk yourself into being blessed. Talk yourself into a better job. Talk yourself into a better living condition. Talk yourself into better situations in your life. And so hearing these negative voices and positive voices and scenarios of action, that's all normal. It is the process that a genius goes through to make a decision. And a genius knows who has the deciding vote. So David didn't let the problems he encountered, he didn't let those problems affect his decision. He made the right decision even when it wasn't popular. And David, he didn't let his troubles affect his decision in any way. Not at all did he do that. Joseph didn't let the public opinion affect his decision of marrying Mary. So, even way back in the garden, Adam and Eve were in the garden in the mentality of positivity, and here comes self, the serpent. You've heard me teach enough, the serpent is self. And so in the garden, there was a board meeting. There was the voice of God, which was positive. Live forever. Eat of this tree, you'll live. Think this way, you'll live. And then there was the serpent, which was the negative voice. You will not die. Go ahead, eat of it. That temptation. And then there was self. Adam and the woman made a CEO decision, and they sided with the wrong voice. And look where that got us. Separated from thinking positive. Now it's a battle to think positive. It was never a battle until man sided with the wrong voice. So I encourage you today to start choosing the voice that you echo and disdain, demean. Do not give your attention nor your audience to the voice of negativity. So keep on talking to yourself, but talk to yourself from a second person, a third person in a positive way. You can do this. We can do this. We can absolutely do this. So I'm going to say Toyota does not tell Ford how to build their vehicles. Ford does not tell Chevrolet how to build their vehicles. Why are you letting a board member dictate something that has been given to you, a blessing called life? So encourage yourself in the Lord. Talk to yourself. Just talk out your problems with yourself, and you'll find less stress. And I really believe it's going to help you. If the woman with the issue of blood could do it, if David could do it, Joseph could do it, if these people could talk to themselves and live in victory, nothing has changed. So I hope you got something out of that today. And let me end with this. Thank you again for chiming in. Pass these things around. I believe it can really help some people. You don't always know what people are going through, and just one sentence, one thought, one nugget of truth can hit home with them. And let me say thank you also for being a part of the ministry and your support. It is so vital. When I finish service today, I'll be in Kansas City. And I love doing, it is a church, but they have a small group, a life group. And I'll be doing a conference on prayer there, and going to Kansas City and the travels. When you support the ministry, that's what this is all about. So I thank you for being a part of it. Go to markshellministries.com, and I thank you so very much for everything that you do. If you have questions, if you have praise reports, email me at contact@markshellministries.com.